She stood there as his racist family called her a gold digger, a user, a threat to their bloodline. They demanded she sign a prenup for scraps. Then she smiled, pulled out her own document, and said 5 words that made his mother faint. "I'm worth $1.4 billion. The first time Nia Thompson walked into the Whitmore family mansion, she should have known what she was walking into. The way Catherine Whitmore's eyes swept over her modest Target dress, the way Harrison Whitmore's handshake lingered just a second too long as he sized her up, the way Preston's sister Brittany looked her up and down like she was inspecting a counterfeit handbag. But Nia was in love, and love has a way of making you blind to the obvious. Preston Whitmore was everything she thought she wanted in a man. Tall, handsome, successful, and most importantly, he seemed to see her for who she was beyond the surface. When they met at a coffee shop 6 months earlier, he didn't know about the Whitmore hotel empire worth $200 million, and she didn't tell him about the Honda Civic she drove or the studio apartment she called home. They just talked about books, travel dreams, and the way Chicago looked different in the winter light. It felt pure, untainted by the complications that money always brought to relationships. But families have a way of poisoning even the purest wells. The whispers started at the first family dinner. Nia caught fragments of conversation when she excused herself to the bathroom, voices that thought they were being discreet but carried just enough for her to hear. "She's clearly after the money. Gold digger alert. Preston could do so much better." Each comment felt like a small knife, but she convinced herself she was being paranoid. Surely people weren't really that cruel, that presumptuous. She was wrong. Catherine Whitmore orchestrated the campaign against her with the precision of a military general. At every family gathering, the comments became bolder, more pointed. At Preston's cousin's wedding, Catherine made sure to seat Nia at the children's table, claiming there had been a mix-up with the arrangements. When Nia politely moved to an empty chair at Preston's table, Catherine loudly announced to the entire reception that they should all discuss that prenup situation now before things went too far. 200 guests fell silent. Preston's face turned red, but he said nothing. Nia excused herself and locked herself in the bathroom where she could hear the bridesmaids laughing about the help trying to marry up. But Catherine was just getting started. She enlisted her daughter Brittany in a campaign that would make mean girls everywhere proud. Brittany launched a social media assault, posting photos of Nia with captions like, "When you're hunting millionaires but shopping at Walmart," and "Cinderella story" or "calculated con." The hashtag Gold Digger Alert started trending in their social circles. Thousands of comments poured in, each one more vicious than the last, picking apart everything from Nia's appearance to her background to her right to exist in their world. Harrison Whitmore took a different approach. He hired a private investigator to dig into Nia's past, hoping to find something, anything, that would prove she was the threat they believed her to be. When that turned up nothing scandalous, he cornered her at Preston's birthday party, his voice low and menacing. "Leave my son or I'll destroy whatever little life you've built," he threatened. "You think you can just waltz in here and take what generations of Whitmores have built? You're nothing, you have nothing, and you never will." The words hit harder than any physical blow could have. Nia had spent her entire life building herself up from nothing, working twice as hard for half the recognition, proving her worth in rooms that didn't want her there. But to hear it spoken so plainly, so cruelly, by a man who had been given everything and earned nothing, nearly broke something inside her that she had worked years to build. Preston, caught between the family that controlled his trust fund and the woman he claimed to love, began to crack under the pressure. The questions started small. Why wouldn't she let him buy her expensive gifts? What did her family do for work? Where did she go to school? Each question felt like an accusation wrapped in concern. He started pulling away, their conversations becoming stilted and awkward. The man who had once made her laugh until her sides ached now looked at her with suspicion in his eyes. The breaking point came at the annual Whitmore Charity Gala, an event that drew Chicago's elite and local media. Catherine had planned this moment carefully. In front of 500 guests and rolling cameras, she took the microphone during the dinner portion of the evening. "Before we talk about charity tonight, let's discuss real charity cases," she announced with a smile that could cut glass. She called Nia up on stage, then presented her with a check for $50,000 to help with her obvious financial struggles. The crowd gasped, cameras flashed. The humiliation was broadcast live on the local news and immediately picked up by social media. Nia stood there under the hot lights, feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes judging her, measuring her, finding her wanting. But she didn't break. She didn't cry. She simply folded the check, placed it back in Catherine's hands, and said, "Some people need charity more than others." Then she walked off the stage with her head held high. But Preston's response to that public humiliation was what finally shattered her heart completely. Instead of defending her, instead of standing up to his family, he handed her the prenup they had prepared and said, "Maybe we should slow things down." The document was insulting in its cruelty, offering her $100,000 if their marriage ended, as if she were a business transaction to be negotiated rather than a human being to be loved. That night, Nia made a phone call that would change everything. "Hello, Mr. Rodriguez. It's time to reveal who I really am. Yes, prepare all the documents and call the Forbes reporter too." The next morning brought unexpected visitors to the Whitmore mansion. Dr. Keenan Thompson, a renowned heart surgeon, Judge Patricia Thompson, a federal judge, Commander Malik Thompson, a decorated Navy SEAL officer. They introduced themselves as Nia's adoptive family, and their presence commanded a respect that money couldn't buy. These weren't people you could intimidate or dismiss. These were people who had earned their place in the world through service, sacrifice, and an unwavering moral compass. Dr. Thompson looked Harrison Whitmore in the eye and said, "You dare question my daughter's worth?" His voice carried the authority of a man who had saved thousands of lives and never doubted his purpose. Judge Thompson addressed Catherine with the cool precision of someone accustomed to cutting through lies and getting to the truth. "Your behavior borders on harassment, Mrs. Whitmore. In my courtroom, we have a word for people who systematically target and humiliate others based on their race and perceived social status." Commander Thompson simply stared at Preston and shook his head. "You're not worthy of her loyalty, son." Real men defend the people they love. The Whitmores, for the first time in their entitled lives, found themselves facing people they couldn't buy, couldn't intimidate, and couldn't dismiss. It was a preview of what was coming. Nia announced a press conference for the following day at the city's most prestigious law firm. "Your family wanted to know my real story," she told Preston. "Tomorrow the whole world will know." The Whitmores spent a sleepless night wondering what bombshell was about to drop, but nothing could have prepared them for the truth. The press conference drew every major media outlet in Chicago. Society reporters who had spent months speculating about the mysterious woman dating Preston Whitmore packed the room alongside financial journalists and local news crews. The Whitmore family sat in the front row, Catherine looking pale but defiant, Harrison drumming his fingers nervously, Brittany frantically deleting her social media posts, and Preston looking like a man watching his life implode in slow motion. When Nia took the podium, she was transformed. Gone was the quiet, modest woman who had endured months of abuse and humiliation. In her place stood someone radiating the quiet confidence that comes from having nothing left to lose and everything to gain. She wore a simple black dress, no jewelry except small pearl earrings, and she spoke with the calm certainty of someone who had been holding back a tsunami. "For the past 6 months," she began, "I've been called a gold digger, a user, a threat to family bloodlines. I've been publicly humiliated, privately threatened, and systematically attacked by people who made assumptions about my worth based on the color of my skin and the size of my bank account. Today I'm here to set the record straight." She paused, letting the tension build. "My name is Nia Thompson Chen, and I am the founder and majority owner of ChefBot Technologies." The room erupted in whispers. ChefBot had been one of the most successful food delivery apps in history, revolutionizing how people ordered meals and supporting local restaurants during the pandemic. It had sold to Google for $2.8 billion 3 years earlier, but the founder had remained mysteriously anonymous. I created ChefBot when I was 22 years old, after experiencing food insecurity in college and watching my neighbors struggle to find affordable, healthy meals. By 25, when Google acquired the company, I had become one of the youngest female billionaires in American history. My current net worth is approximately $1.4 billion. Catherine Whitmore's face went from pale to green. Harrison literally choked on the champagne he was sipping, causing a medical assistant to rush over. Brittany sat frozen, her phone halfway to her face as she realized every cruel post she had made was now evidence of her family's humiliation. Preston simply stared, his mouth hanging open like a broken door. I've been living modestly not because I couldn't afford luxury, but because I wanted to find genuine love, not someone attracted to my wealth. I work at the nonprofit as a volunteer passion project, donating my entire salary to food banks across the city. I drive a Honda Civic because it's reliable and practical. I live in a studio apartment because it keeps me grounded and reminds me where I came from. Nia reached into her briefcase and pulled out a thick legal document. This is my prenuptial agreement. It protects Preston Whitmore's $200 million inheritance from my $1.4 billion fortune. She let that sink in. I was never after your money, Preston. The question you and your family need to answer is, were you after mine? The room exploded. Photographers clicked frantically. Reporters shouted questions. Social media notifications pinged constantly as the story spread across the internet at light speed. But Nia wasn't finished. I fell in love with a man I thought had character, integrity, and the strength to stand up for what was right. Instead, I found someone controlled by racist family members who saw a black woman and immediately assumed the worst. You didn't see my PhD in computer science from MIT. You didn't see my charitable work feeding hungry families. You didn't see my adoptive parents who raised me to believe in service over self. You saw a black woman dating a white man with money, and you decided I was the threat. Preston finally found his voice and tried to interrupt, but Nia held up her hand. I'm not finished. For 6 months, I endured your family's cruelty because I believed love could overcome prejudice. I was wrong. Love requires courage, and courage requires character. Preston, you have neither. When your family attacked me, you joined them. When they humiliated me publicly, you handed me a prenup. When they threatened to destroy my life, you chose their approval over my dignity. She walked over to where Preston sat, his face red with shame and shock. You're not getting my prenup, Preston. You're not getting my money. You're not getting my forgiveness. And you're certainly not getting me. She placed the Whitmore family's insulting prenup on his lap. Keep this as a reminder of what your racism cost you. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Within hours, the story had gone viral worldwide. Billionaire revenge trended globally. The video of Catherine Whitmore fainting when she learned Nia's true wealth became the most shared clip of the year. Harrison's business partners began distancing themselves from the Whitmore brand, not wanting to be associated with the racist scandal. Brittany's wealthy friends dropped her faster than a hot coal, and her own social media followers turned on her, flooding her accounts with mockery and condemnation. But perhaps the most satisfying part of the revenge was how complete it was. Preston spent weeks calling, texting, and showing up at Nia's apartment, begging for forgiveness and a second chance. He promised to cut ties with his family, to make public apologies, to spend the rest of his life making it up to her. But Nia had moved on. She blocked his number, hired security, and focused on her work with renewed passion. 6 months later, the gossip columns reported on Preston's increasingly desperate attempts to win her back, even as his family's empire crumbled around them. The Whitmore hotels began losing business as their racist behavior became widely known. Catherine became a social pariah, uninvited from charity boards and country club events. Harrison's health declined under the stress of watching his life's work destroyed by his own prejudice. Brittany moved across the country, unable to show her face in Chicago society. Meanwhile, Nia had found real love with Dr. Andre Williams, a brilliant cardiovascular surgeon who had known her adoptive father for years. Andre had fallen in love with her mind, her heart, and her dedication to helping others, long before he learned about her wealth. Their engagement announcement included a photo of Andre proposing with a simple solitaire ring in the community garden where they volunteered together, feeding families in need. The contrast couldn't have been more perfect. Preston, who had everything handed to him, lost it all because he chose prejudice over love. Nia, who had built everything herself, found happiness with someone who valued her character over her bank account. At their engagement party, surrounded by friends who loved them for who they were rather than what they owned, Nia gave a toast that summed up everything she had learned. Never let anyone make you small to fit their narrow expectations. The people who truly matter will see your worth without a price tag, and sometimes the best revenge against those who underestimate you is simply living well and proving them wrong. As for Preston, he spent his nights scrolling through social media, watching the woman he had lost build a beautiful life with someone who deserved her. He had chosen his family's approval over love, racism over respect, comfort over courage. And in doing so, he had lost not just a girlfriend, but a partner worth more than everything his family had ever built. The moral was crystal clear. Before you judge someone's worth by their appearance or assume their intentions based on their race, remember that the quiet person in the corner might be the most powerful person in the room. Respect isn't earned through inheritance, it's built through character. And sometimes the person you underestimate is the one who could have changed your life forever if only you had been brave enough to deserve them.